I think we go. Right. Thank you everybody for coming. This session is called It's Okay to Not Be Okay, Establishing Support Frameworks in Community Teams. I'm Will Huggins, and on Drupal.org I am zoocha-will, and I am presenting this session. At Zoocha, I'm the co-founder. We build and support Drupal websites, essentially. But that's not what this session is about. This session is really about whether we're okay. So if you're anything like me, you will approach that question as if there is a right and a wrong answer, and feel an enormous amount of pressure to give the right answer, which you assume is the green face. But obviously not every one of us is always feeling that good. And so it's about how do we make sure that there is an acceptance of when the answer is perhaps not always okay. This isn't just another talk about burnout either. There's a lot of reasons why a community team will need to support each other. Burnout is definitely one that is experienced a lot in teams, and we'll touch on some of the reasons why, but it could be health, bereavement, child problems. I'm not a parent, as you can tell by the uncomfortable nature with which I describe child problems. So there's all sorts of reasons why a member of a community team might need some help and support in order to cope, basically. And there is a difference between community teams and, if you like, organised teams. And by organised teams, I generally mean in the workplace. In corporations, you have defined structures and hierarchies. You will have policies and processes. And even if it's an organisation that doesn't really care about you, they do at least have some legal obligations to look after you. So that doesn't really exist in community teams. They are often more self-organised, they're unstructured, and importantly, they don't really have any obligation to care for you. So if they hopefully do, they're still having to try and figure out, well, how do we put in place a framework that ensures that care is distributed and it achieves and reaches the people that it needs to. And one of the reasons why, as I say, burnout is one thing, but there are many reasons why a team member within a community team might need support. And it actually, there's a lot to be done, basically. And in community teams that are more self-organising, it often falls on a few. So, first of all, who is going to do all this stuff? And you will know, having attended sessions this week, you will have seen a lot of the same people. And that's because actually, often the work does fall on a few who are really committed. And it's because there is a lot. There's loads of stuff to decide what we're going to do and decide what we're going to do first, in what order we're going to do it. There's been about 3 or 4 things this week that I'm passionate about and want to get involved in, but I mean, literally, unless I decide to stop sleeping, eating, or other essential bodily functions, then I'm just not, I can't take them on. So it's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves. And so I've kind of created a new buzz phrase, I'm afraid, like the world needs another one. And it's called performative commitment. So it's like that notion that you have to be doing stuff to signal to your community that you're doing things. That if your output isn't at a certain level, then you're going to be seen as perhaps not contributing or not being committed. And that's quite dangerous because, again, it just adds that pressure. So the first bit of pressure, are you okay? I've got the pressure to say, yes, I am, I'm fine. The next bit of pressure is like, am I doing enough? Am I taking on enough? And then the final bit of pressure is, well, actually, am I demonstrating that I'm achieving what I've told my teammates I'm going to achieve? So it's incumbent on all of us, really, to spot the warning signs when we think perhaps someone has taken on too much or is potentially suffering from health or family or personal situations that is compromising their ability to deliver on some of the things that they've committed to do to within their community team. Some of the early signs are withdrawal, so they might kind of step back a little bit, stop being as communicative as they were before, and you might sort of notice them withdrawing from conversations that otherwise they would have previously been quite, taking a lead in. There might be a tone shift, so they might become more defensive is often a sign that you spot in a team member who is under pressure or feeling vulnerable, is they become defensive, and spotting that shift in tone is a really good way of spotting that they may need some support. And then finally, absence. Kind of the worst case is when someone just stops turning up because, first of all, usually because of pressures, burnout, family obligations. Then it becomes a bit of a snowball, and they stop turning up because they've got a bit of shame about maybe not having contributed, that performative commitment issue. And then that can snowball again before they feel isolated from the community and possibly even beyond reach for receiving support. So one of the things that I want to kind of bring to the discussion is the notion of a Drupal code of care, or an even catchier title that I came up with was Drupal Community Support Framework. And really, we have a code of conduct, so we know if there is conflict in the community, inappropriate behaviour, we know how to deal with it. There's a really clear framework and a pathway for escalation. We've got a code of ethics, so if there is a breach of a conflict of interest or confidentiality, we have a way of dealing with that. If somebody is in trouble in the community, we don't have a way of dealing with it. It's entirely incumbent on individuals to take it upon themselves to reach out, try and establish what's wrong, if they can help, and what support is needed, if at all. So the first step in creating that kind of, if you like, dual policy with the code of conduct and code of ethics is promoting psychological safety. So I think that's the first foundation really in establishing a code of care within the Drupal community. And what that means is normalising vulnerability, so not treating "are you okay" as a right or wrong question, and one where actually any answer is fine, so long as it's the true and honest answer. And then secondly, for when the answer is that no, I'm not okay actually, is having a transparent care pathway that enables a community team to support that person. And what that path might look like is once a warning sign has been identified, so whether it's a bit of withdrawal from normal interactions, a tone change, or even a initial absence, is to start establishing that early and then regular check-in, so that we can monitor is that behaviour a very short-term temporary one, and actually they don't need any support, they just need a bit of space for a day or two, or is there something more? And if there's something more, then potentially having a process where their peers can follow up with them, perhaps a little bit more privately, not in the context of a work stream or a async meeting, but just something they can kind of reach out and see if they can help. If it turns out there is perhaps a problem, large or small, then there needs to be an escalation point. Actually, I've got some little pointers for this. There needs to be an escalation point. So if the peers with the tools and resources within the code of care aren't able to help, then they can escalate it to the community working group care team. Doesn't exist at the moment, but potentially could have a really useful role. Then if that escalation then identifies that there is a real problem, then I think there's a possible role for a trusted contact. So this would be what I've described as a mutually optional role. So as an individual, I can optionally choose to be somebody's trusted contact, and as an individual, I can optionally select a trusted contact. And both people have to agree, that's why it's mutual. But what that would do is then it would give an individual the ability to have one trusted person that they can talk to and say, look, the stuff I want to tell you that is very personal, I don't want the rest of the team to know, but it's important they know something is happening so that I have the space to be able to deal with it. Again, needs quite a lot, I think, of thought in terms of how that could work, but I think there is a role for that where Somebody needs to be able to communicate, but they don't want to communicate to the masses. And then the final one, which is the emergency, which is when someone is kind of completely gone from all communication. And we need, again, to use those mechanisms to make sure that we could still find a way of reaching those individuals to ensure that if they do need support, and support can be offered by the community, that they're able to access it. So, what now? I've thought about this a lot. One of my ideas was, well, I should join the community working group team and drive this forward. And then I thought, well, yeah, when am I going to do that? So I'm going to obviously communicate with the community working group team, with you all as my first point of communication, and then hopefully kind of lobby this a little bit so that eventually we might get to a place where we can put in place, alongside the code of conduct and the code of ethics, a code of care that enables us to support each other better than we currently do. So, thank you. And you can give me a score just to add a little bit more pressure. Any questions, or thoughts, or ideas?
Well, lovely. I'm just giving it to someone.
In today's world, we have more people in remote working. When they don't turn up, that's obvious, but how do you look to spot those problems early when they're remote, and it's a lot harder to spot some initial warning signs?
Yeah, it is definitely difficult, but and often, some people's communication cadence can vary, so not everyone responds to Slack messages immediately, or replies to an email, or even gets involved in a WhatsApp chat very often. So you kind of, each individual will be different, and it's a kind of gauging, is this unusual? They haven't responded for a few days, or and I think that's when you do that kind of early reach out. It's just like, look, just wanted to check in. Everything all right? I noticed you've been a bit quiet. Tell me to back off if I'm, overstepping, but just wanted to see. So it's again, it's about that normalising vulnerability point. Is I think sometimes those things seem weird because we make them weird, but actually it shouldn't be weird to just say, look, I'm just a little bit worried about you, and for that person to be able to say, I really appreciate you being worried, but yeah, I'm fine, so back off. I always thought it would clean it up, but evidently it goes the other way. I hope that answers it. It is difficult though. Remote teams, it's always a challenge. Yeah.
Mine is just a comment to thank you for this session, because it's so important. This is the first time. No, just a quick comment to thank you for this session, because we don't talk about care a lot or enough. So,
Yeah.
thanks. I
Thank
feel
you.
like this is the first session of this kind, so hopefully we'll continue.
Thank you. Yeah.
I sometimes
Staat hij dan aan?
Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, I think we've got it on.
Sometimes it's issues people giving harsh comments to each other, and then I try my best to de-escalate, but
Yeah.
it's not so successful. Is that also a target for this group?
I think it could be, because there are grey areas in the code of conduct around what is acceptable and the behaviours that we want to exhibit. One person's assertive, directive instruction could be another person's offensive and intimidating comment. You know, so we all have slightly different benchmarks about things like that, and that there is a little bit of a grey area. You know, the code of conduct and conflict resolution process, you know, should be able to iron out most of those things, but there may be those things right in the centre of that grey area, which actually are more about care than they are about conflict, and more about helping people with their communication style, maybe, or you know, helping to be an intermediary in a discussion to ensure that the person that is you know, relaying information gets the information across, but the person that is receiving the information is doing so in the spirit that it's intended, rather than necessarily the nature that it's delivered. So I do think that there is, you know, as part of the overall mix of policies within the Drupal community, this has a role in that situation.
Okay, trying to process that answer. Do you mean that this is already covered by code of conduct?
I think it is partly, but I still think there's that gap.
There's a gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
One more. Sorry. Not so much more of a question, but in the past, if someone asked me, "Are you okay?" I would always say yes, I'm
Yeah.
okay, and just glossed over it. We need to think how we ask the question. A yes or no question is a dead end question.
Mhm.
Really be able to ask a leading question to get them to be able to talk.
I think that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I definitely do. And yeah, I think that's a really good point. I can't add to it, it's so good.
The only thing that I would like to add is that in some cases it's the way you ask once again the same question. For example, the first time, are you okay? Yes. Are you okay? Then it's the real answer.
Yeah.
I think to talk about what you were talking about, and looking at like how people behave and how different people, monitoring for differences in how people are behaving as signs, early warning signs. Equally, the person who is potentially raising the rude or direct feedback, that could be a sign that they are struggling as well. So I think it's a point in terms of a code of care that it doesn't just address people who are struggling in the ways that we often are more societally acceptable, so people who are just withdrawing or sad, but also the people who are demonstrating they're struggling in a difficult or potentially abrasive way, can equally be a sign of struggle as well. So it's both ways, I think, on what you were talking about, making sure that people are protected on both sides of that kind of emotional engagement.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, that addresses that point about the grey area, which is, you know, it's not about conflict, it's about identifying the warning signs that there's something more than just one comment being taken badly by another person, but actually, yeah, on either side, there could be a problem that needs support.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thinking about this in a community team we already have, sometimes it's hard because if you take that step back because you are busy and you don't have time to give that support, how do we potentially reintroduce these people back in? Because obviously if you take a step back and something moves on, especially if it's event planning or something, how do you get those people slowly back in? Because sometimes I think people drop out, and it doesn't mean they're not necessarily interested, but if you've already got an established team who are moving on and then producing something, those people might think, oh well, I'm out now, I've lost it. So I wonder whether part of that needs to be considered as to how to keep that conversation and encourage people back in, maybe when time's settled and they've got a bit more time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I spent a lot of time, probably too much time really, thinking about this one, which is, you know, we kind of judge contribution and commitment by, you know, have you done stuff, you know, have you interacted on a ticket, or, showing up to an async meeting, but sometimes just kind of being there listening is contribution. And actually, how many people in the room have contributed to an issue queue ticket that you got credit for? Okay. How much time did you spend thinking about that issue ticket or piece of work that you didn't get credit for? No. So it's a lot. We're all, that kind of contribution is massive. So if there is somebody that's had to take a step back, making sure that they still feel part of the team and not judged on the fact that they're not contributing, because actually being part of the team, listening and understanding what's going on, so that at some point they can step back in and go, do you know what, I can take this on now, or I can take that task. They're ready and able to do it, and being there, showing up and listening, even in a quite passive or silent way, is still contribution, because otherwise they wouldn't be ready to take up a role or take a task. I need just a bare buzzword basically for it. Any answers on a postcard?
Thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you.